Scarface 1920, how to play the solo rules and a solo gameplay just to show you how everything works together. Come on back after the break. Hey everybody, welcome out to the show, Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to our wonderful tabletop board gaming hobby. In this video, I'm going to show you how to play the solo rules and actually show you some gameplay from the solo rules itself. Now, this video is part of a complete video series. If you want to check out the full video series, check out the link in the corner here. But the reason why I bring that up is the most important thing. I'm going to do this in a way because I know this video is going to go way too long if I don't do this. But the way I'm going to do this was with the assumption that you've watched the other videos in this series. I do have a full tutorial video that teaches you how to play the game, and I'm going to do this video in a way that actually builds off of that. So if you have no idea how to play Scarface 1920, you're going to be lost by watching this video. If you watch some of the other videos in my series, you are going to be doing pretty darn fine. You'll be a-okay to watch this video, because I'm going to teach you the differences between the standard rules and then the solo rules. I'm going to show you how the AI also plays out itself. Once we've done through the tutorial aspects of everything, then I'm going to show you actually how the game plays. Now, since I know that's going to make this video way too long, I'm not going to do a full gameplay, but I'm going to show you enough of the gameplay so you can see exactly how Scarface 1920 plays. Now, if you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I will do my best to get those questions as quickly as I can. You also feel free to email me. That's off-the-shelf board game reviews at ots@bgr@gmail.com. I do my best to answer those questions as quickly as I can. If you enjoy the content, you enjoy the videos I put out there, think about tossing $1 on the tip jar over at Patreon, patreon.com/otsbgr. This channel is 100% sponsor-free, which means I give you my own free opinions, but also means I pay for everything on my own pocketbook. Tossing $1 in the tip jar is a great way to say thanks. Now, if you don't want to pay any money, you don't have to. Just click those two buttons down below, the like and subscribe. It takes you 2 seconds and 2 mouse clicks to go ahead and help those YouTube analytics make sure that other people go out there and check out this channel and help the channel grow. Now, with all that said, let's go and bring everything down onto the table and teach you how to play Scarface 1920 with the solo rules, with the purple game, which is going to be the Arnold Rothstein and the 7 Gems, versus Capone himself playing the solo AI, the Enforcer. Let's get things started. Now, if you're pretty familiar with how to play the basic game of Scarface 1920, the solo rules won't be that complicated for you. There's just a few things you need to understand. But before we get into actually explaining those couple of differences, it's basically how the AI works. The player themselves don't have too many differences. One small difference when it comes to jobs, I'll show you that during the setup aspect of it. But the important thing to understand is you actually need to go through a couple decks and hunt down a couple different cards. Now, these cards are going to be inside the decks themselves, and these cards are going to have a little small square on them. Now, I'm sure it's probably going to be next to impossible to see on a camera. Heck, these squares are small enough that's almost hard to see just by picking up the cards and going, yep, that one has a square on it. Because it's a little small mark, but it's going to be a small mark in the lower left-hand corner. Basically, is going to be in the shape of a square next to the number for that individual card. If you go through all the decks of cards, find all the ones that have a little square on it. Once you find those cards, you're simply going to take them and remove them from the game, because when you're playing with a solo AI, you're not going to use them. Now, there's a couple of news cards, there's a couple of the different job cards, there's a couple of different raid cards. You can see, again, the little square on the lower left-hand corner. Basically, go through the deck and remove all those cards. Now, there's more than the cards I have displayed here. I'm just trying to give you the rough idea. Basically, you need to hunt through these decks and pull out a couple different cards. Once you've pulled out all those cards, you can actually go ahead and set up everything you normally would as you would for a standard game of Scarface 1920. There's a couple different differences on how that's going to set up is going to occur. But before we break into the setup, I want to go ahead and actually explain to you how the solo AI works, because the solo AI is kind of doing a little bit of a different thing when it's playing the game. So when you're playing the game, what you need to do is you need to pick one of the gangs to go ahead and represent the Enforcer. Now, the solo AI is called the Enforcer, and you're basically playing against them. Now, the cool thing about this game is you can play this game as a 2-player game, you solo versus the Enforcer, or you can actually go ahead and add the Enforcer into a multiplayer game all the way up to 3 players versus 1 Enforcer, still keeping the game at a 4-player game. Now, there's a little bit of brute forcing you need to do when you play this game as multiple players versus the AI. And I'm not saying brute forcing in a negative way. There's just going to be some situations where you might have to go and you can kind of have to discuss with the rest of the table your interpretation of the rules. Now, I'm not saying the rules are odd. Just understand there are actually a lot of combinations in this game, and there's some potential combinations that may cause you to get paused. If you go ahead and make sure you're very fluent with the definitions in the game, and you're actually fluent with the turn structure, it really shouldn't cause you any problems. But if you rush into it, there may be a couple mistakes you might make with the higher player count, 2, 3 in players versus the AI. So just make sure you stop whenever you get any of those unique situations and go ahead and check out the rulebook, because the rulebook does do a good job giving you that dictionary. And if you remember the lexicon the game uses, you really shouldn't have too many problems. But I wanted to say that because I'm not going to cover the multiplayer versus the AI, because that's going to bog things down into a mire. And this video is going to go anywhere from 2 hours, maybe up to 4 hours, and I definitely don't want that to happen. What we need to do is we need to kind of basically explain the differences that go on between the enforcer and versus a regular player. The solo AI is going to use a backboard of any one of the gangs, specifically whichever gang you want to play. Now, the enforcer uses pretty much almost everything that a normal player would use, but there's a couple different changes, and they're very, very important. Very first thing to understand is that the enforcer themselves is not going to use any of the standard gang member cards. That goes for the boss card, that goes for the standard gang members, and also goes for the right hands. All 10 of these cards you're going to basically remove from the game because the solo AI does not use them at all. Additionally, the solo AI does not use the 2 basic starting deals that every single player starts with, which is going to be the gun supplier, and it's also going to be the alcohol supplier. You basically take these and you remove them from the game. They are going to be replaced with the gun runner, and they're also going to be replaced with the distillery owner. So what you need to do is, before you shuffle up the dealer's deck, you need to go through the dealer's deck and find 1 gun runner, 1 distillery owner, pull them off to the side, then shuffle the dealer's deck, because these are the actual 2 deals that the enforcer is going to start with. Additionally, these are the only 2 deals that will ever be face up for the enforcer during the entire game. And I'll explain that when I'm explaining all the action. Just understand, these 2 deals start the game face up. Any additional deals that the enforcer ever gets are always going to be face down. That's very important. Don't make that mistake when you're learning how to play the game. Additionally, since the enforcer player is not using a standard deck of gang cards, we need to understand that the enforcer has their own solo deck. Now, the solo deck comes in 3 separate decks that you need to shuffle separately. There's the A deck, the B deck, and then there's also the C deck. Now, the C deck is the starting deck that the solo enforcer is going to be using at the start of the game. Various different actions are going to allow the enforcer to shuffle in B cards and also shuffle in A cards into the C deck. We're always going to be using the C deck for the entire game. Now, the B cards are a little more powerful than the C cards, and then the A cards are a little more powerful than the B cards. So that's very important, because as we're leveling up our gang, unlike standard, when we're playing the game for a standard player, instead of trying to get our right-hand man into our starting decks like we would do for a standard player, we're going to be shuffling these more powerful cards into our standard deck by going out and leveling up, and also by taking the actions of gaining associates. The enforcer never gains associates cards themselves. They can take the action to gain associates, and every time they're going to gain an associate, instead of actually taking the associate card is going to go off to the side. Technically and effectively, as far as the rules are concerned, it's out of the game, but the enforcer will still score those cards at the end of the game. Remember I said that there's a very important lexicon in this game? That's what I mean when I'm talking about here. These cards are effectively out of the game, meaning that players cannot use attacking cards to go ahead and force these cards out of the enforcer's hands. Once the enforcer has these cards, they're going to be placed off to the side, effectively out of the game, meaning they can't be affected by other cards, but at the end of the game, the enforcer is going to score those cards. We'll go on with other differences as we continue to go on. I'm just trying to impress upon you. There's some important differences that make the enforcer play just a little bit differently. Now, this player board is going to be mostly the same for what you're seeing from your standard player board, but the sides on the side right here are going to have different actions. Instead of gaining muscle and influence, the enforcer gains an attribute called power. Power is always muscle and influence, and we're never going to gain muscle or influence as the enforcer player. We're always gaining power. Now, along the side here, we're going to see how many cards we're going to play every single time we take an action as the enforcer, and we're going to see how many actions we're taking. So at level 1, we see that we get 1 card and we get 2 actions. If we level all the way up by snaking up the track all the way to the top, we will see that we will play 3 cards every turn, and we also go ahead and take 4 actions as the enforcer player. Pretty standard. You know how to play a basic game. That shouldn't be too confusing. Next up, we're going to have district numbers on the side right here next to all the powers. When we're leveling up our gang, the district number is going to be very, very important, because that's going to influence which one of our skills we're leveling up. These are district tokens. We're going to randomize these when we set up the game. And then additionally, you're going to see that most of these powers and abilities for the gangs are mostly the same. The only one that's unique is the actual skill of power itself. Now, generally speaking, every one of these action cards you're going to see has a basic amount of power they're going to generate, plus any power we're going to generate as we level up our power skill. At the start of the game, we have 0 power. Once we do our first level up, let's say we manage to take that level up right there, we would now get to 1 bonus power, plus the power from cards played. If we get to here, we have now plus 2 power, plus the power bonus from cards we're going to play. So let's say we happen to be all the way up to here on the track right here by doing various different level ups. We played all 3 of these cards. Our total power will be 2 plus 1 is 5, plus 2 more, which would give us a total of 7 power. Now, power is muscle and influence. I think that should make most sense to most people just by understanding how that works, but I just want to explain to you how that works. The rest of these should be mostly pretty self-explanatory because they're fairly similar to all the powers for the standard players. That's just the basic player board, but what you want to do on top of that is grab a couple markers or tokens of some kind that you can use to track the actions that the solo AI is taking. Now, the solo AI, you can basically take these tokens out of another player, or since you're probably a board gamer like me who has about 1 billion board games with extra components, steal some components from a game that you're not using anymore and throw them in the box because make your life a lot easier. We're going to basically use these to track which actions we're taking because we get a limited amount of actions every single turn. That's the basic player board. Not too confusing, but now let's go ahead and explain exactly how these solo AI cards are going to work. But before we go on any further, and before I forget, because this is very, very important, the Enforcer is a dirty cheater. Nah, he just plays really, really well. Understand that the Enforcer, both of their vehicles share powers. That means their cars have the same powers as their trucks. Their trucks have the same powers as their cars. Additionally, because he's a dirty cheater, I keep saying that, but basically I'm just trying to reinforce the concept. Since he's a dirty cheater, he never has to suffer bribery. Bribery is completely ignored by the Enforcer. So the Enforcer has the power of one of the jobs that's actually in the game. It's a job that allows your cars and your vehicles to share the same power. Well, they have that power automatically at all times. Additionally, their jobs when they gain them are going to come into play in effect. So instants are basically not really going to help them too much. You'll see what I mean when we get to that point. But they're also going to help them to steal stuff and steal resources from us. So it all makes sense when we get to that point. Just want to make sure you understand there are some differences. But let's go ahead and look at the solo AI cards themselves. Now, the solo AI cards can be broken down into various different sections. Amount of muscle generated, the amount of movement generated, and the actions that the solo AI is going to take. Every time we're playing this game, based on the amount of cards we get for our level base right here, so let's say we happen to be at this level right here, right now, on the solo Enforcer's turn, they're going to draw this many cards. So I would draw 1 card, and I'm going to put out 2 cards. And you basically want to make sure you lay them out kind of like a book, just like this, and you'll see why it's very, very important. We're going to total the amount of muscle we generate, and that's how much muscle we have for taking actions. And then we're going to total the amount of movement we have, which is going to allow us to move around the board. And then we're going to take actions, basically reading like a book. We're going to read top left, then the next one on the top row. If we can't take these actions, we're going to go down, and we're going to start reading across again. And then we're going to go down, read across again. And we're basically looking for actions that we can take. If we have 2 action cubes that are allotted to the Enforcer, if we take the first action, we're going to do it, and we're going to place the cube on top. Then we're going to read the next action. If we can do it, we're going to do the same thing, and we're out of action cubes. We're done. If we can't do any of these actions, we're going to skip the action and move to the next one in line, continuing to do actions. Once we get to an action that we complete, and once we're out of cubes, that's basically it for the Enforcer's turn. If we manage to get through the complete row of cards by reading it basically like a book without using action cubes, well, the Enforcer is still out of actions, and their turn is over. Not going to happen too often. Additionally, you're going to notice that there's some numbers next to every one of these actions. Those are bonus muscle they're going to get for that specific action only. Don't get confused. They're only going to get that bonus muscle or that bonus power. Ooh, I almost did it again. They're almost going to get that bonus power of that specific action, not for other actions that may be performed on this card. So that basically means we would, if we have these 2 cards in our Enforcer turn, we would have 2 power, and if we happen to be taking this action, we would have 4 power to take that action. We wouldn't have 4 power for this action because that's a bonus of 0, so we'd only have 2 power for that action. But if we got all the way down to here, we would have 4 power for that action. If we did this action right there, we would have 3 power for that action. Should make a lot of sense for you, but those are just the important concepts to understand for the Enforcer. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and set up the game like you would for a standard game, but I'm going to cover the differences that occur between a standard game and a game versus the Enforcer. Like I said, there are a couple differences that we need to cover when we go in and set up the board for the Enforcer player. Basically, the Enforcer player, like I already mentioned, but I just want to repeat it just in case there's any confusion or any problems. Make sure you go through all the decks of cards, remove any of those cards that have that little square in the lower left-hand corner. After that, the next thing we need to do is see the board with these Enforcer tokens right here. Now, these Enforcer tokens are numbered 1 through 7, and they're going to signify how the Enforcer is moving across the board. Basically, the Enforcer is going to move across the board based on these numbers, and these are sequential numbers. So whenever we're moving, we're going to go up into the higher number, whatever it happens to be. So if we happen to be at number 5, whatever district that happens to be, and we need to move 3 spaces, we're going to move from 5 to 6, that's 1 movement, 6 to 7, that's 2 movement, and then we're going to wrap back down to 1 as our 3rd point of movement. But if we happen to be at number 2 district, wherever it happens to be, and we have to move 3 spaces, we're going to go from number 2 to 5. Now, we don't move through that sequence, we just basically hop into the next section. And we just need to put these tokens out as randomly as we want, and it really doesn't matter how you put them out. Don't fuss about it. Basically, just get them out as quickly as possible, and then you're basically ready to move on. So just to reemphasize what I said earlier, if we happen to be with the Enforcer at this location and we have 2 points of movement, we would go from space 7, district 7, all the way to district number 2 with our 2 points of movement. If we happen to be at district 7 and we happen to take 5 points of movement, well, that put us at district number 5, which will put us right over here. Super duper easy, nothing to really sweat about that at all. The next change, as I've already mentioned, is removing those 2 dealers from the Enforcer's deck and making sure that the Enforcer is set up with the gun runner and with the distillery owner when you set up their board. The rest of the board is pretty much going to be the same as we do in a standard setup. We get our $10, we get all the rest of our components. Our thug board is going to be set up exactly the same with 6, 2, and 4, and these are the thugs we're going to have available. This will be our solo deck of our C cards, this will be our solo deck of our B cards, and this will be our A cards right here. And you can see right here, I have them just set up just simply like that, perfectly fine. Just don't make any mistakes. If you have to grab from the B deck, it'll be from here. If I have to grab from the A deck, it'll be here. It'll be added onto either our draw pile of our C deck or our C deck discard pile. These are basic jobs we start with, super duper easy. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the Enforcer is a dirty cheater, and apparently they most recently watched the gangster movie because the Enforcer player always gets to go forward first. Always. Always. Doesn't matter, the Enforcer goes first. And now we get to the fun part of setting up the job deck for both of our players. Now, the interesting thing is, for the job deck, we're going to draw the top 2 jobs from the job deck, and we're going to look at both of these. We're going to pick one of these jobs, and we're going to take this job. Oh, nice. I love this job. We're going to take this job, and we're going to take it, and we're going to place it face down. The other job is going to be given to the Enforcer player, and that's going to be placed face up, which, yes, that does mean that that job definitely does start in play. Be very, very careful about that. Once we've done that, we're going to repeat that process a second time. We're simply going to draw 2 of the jobs, look at the 2 jobs, and let's see here. I can do that. We're going to take the job we want, place it face down, and then again, the other job is going to be given to the Enforcer player, also face up next to him. Notice that we have an instant and we have a permanent. Both of these cards are effectively in play right now, but they're not going to do anything. They don't trigger when they come into play. They're just permanent powers. So in a way, I wouldn't give the Enforcer player as many instances as possible, but also note that we're not going to discard the instance even though they don't go off, because the Enforcer player is going to steal resources from us based on the total amount of jobs they have plus a multiplier in the game. So be very, very careful about that. So let's go ahead and grab our 3rd set of cards here. And we'll look at both these, and yeah, I'm going to give them the instant again. So I will take Orphanage Donation, which is a permanent. They will get Army Train Robbery, and they will get that card again face up. I can just take both of these cards and place them like this because their powers are not going to go off at all. The only thing they will have access to is going to be this permanent, which is a permanent power for them, and this card is effectively in play. It doesn't trigger when I put it out there for them. It's just a power that they have for the rest of the game. Very, very important. Now, the Enforcer sets up pretty much standard like the rest of all the players. Again, we're going to start with level 1 on the track here for our crime rate. The only thing left to do is pick which district we want to start with. And to make things easy, you're supposed to randomize it and pick one of the districts out there. I'm trying to do this very, very quickly. I'm just going to pick district number 1, and I just want to do this as quickly as possible. Now, there's some rules about why we want to do this. They're basically going to pick the most profitable, blah, 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 or you randomize it. I'm trying to make this as quick and easy as possible. Don't worry, later in the video, I'm going to explain to you how the Enforcer player picks specific districts. It's very important. I just don't want to confuse everything by jumbling the rules all over the place. Understand there's rules how it does go out. Let's go ahead and move on. Just like a normal player, we will go ahead and place out a control marker signifying that we have control in this area, and then we will put out a car or a truck. Now don't sweat this too much. It doesn't matter if it's a car or a truck because all the cars in the Enforcer player's army or gang have the powers of the trucks, and all the trucks have the powers of the cars. So this effectively gives us a -1 discount and +1 to our thug level. So let's go ahead and move on. Next thing we need to do is we need to figure out exactly which resources the Enforcer's player gets to start with. Just like a normal player, the Enforcer gets to start with 2 resources, but the resources they're going to choose is going to be based on the neighborhood they've selected. Now, the neighborhood they've selected, for example, if I would have picked this neighborhood right here, since this neighborhood requires 1 of each resource, they will gain 1 of each resource. Now, if a neighborhood we select takes only 1 resource to go ahead and gain, they will gain 2 of those resources. So since this resource only takes 1 resource to take it over, the Enforcer player is going to gain 2 alcohol. Now, this was a neighborhood that required guns and no alcohol, then they would take 2 guns instead. But we're going to take the 2 alcohol, and we're going to take these 2 alcohol, and we're going to place them on top of the 2 deals we have. Now, we have the 2 deals that have the normal maximum limit right there, right now. Now, again, like I said earlier, all future deals the Enforcer gains are going to be placed face down. We are not even going to look at these deals when the Enforcer gains them. We're simply going to take these deals and we're going to place these deals face down next to the deals we have already gained as the Enforcer player. Now, this is very important to understand because the way these face down deals work, they all have the same statistics on them. Every one of these deals is effectively equal to having the ability to place 1 thug on it. They have a capacity of 1. There's an error in the rulebook that says that's actually a capacity of 0. Ignore that error. It is actually an error in the rulebook. But they have a capacity of 1 thug. They have a capacity of carrying 1 resource. And they also have the capacity of creating 2 of any resource in the game. Basically, just like the starting resources we have, it can either be 1 alcohol, 1 gun, or 2 alcohol or 2 guns. That's basically how all these face down deals are. That's every single one of the face down deals. Don't forget it, it's very important. The Enforcer player never ever gets any more face up deals. The rest of their deals are all face down with that basic generic statistic. Now, before we go ahead and cover exactly how all the different actions are a little bit different for the Enforcer player, let's go and cover exactly how the Enforcer player is going to work. As I said earlier, the Enforcer player is going to be playing from a solo AI deck. This does mean that the Enforcer player never has a hand of cards. Their solo deck is either going to be their draw pile, their discard pile, or it's going to be their plan. They never ever have cards in their hand. So if a player plays a card that allows you to get rid of cards in another player's hand, those don't work versus the Enforcer. The Enforcer never ever takes a hand of cards. The basic idea of what we're going to do is we're going to flip over a certain amount of cards based on our current card count on our gang level board, which at the beginning we see will be 1 card simply as this starting gang right here. After we flip over that card, it's going to give us a certain amount of power to take actions. It's going to give us a certain amount of movement. It's going to give us our list of actions that we're going to do, and we're going to take it as a yes or no type of situation. If we do the action, we're going to do it. If we can't do the action at all, we're not going to do the action. But if they do the action partially, they're still going to do the action. So basically, we're looking at the action. Can they do the action at all? Yes, they will do it. If they can't do the action at all, then they won't do it. We're going to skip into the next action following in the action order. Do note that the Enforcer is going to play smart. If you're finding out that the game is a little bit easy, make sure that you're not playing the Enforcer dumb. It's not a dumb AI. It is actually going to aggressively go after you. So basically remember that if it can do any part of an action, it will do it. But don't pretend that since it can't do an action and get any resources, that's taking its action. No. If it cannot do an action, it's not going to do it, and it's going to move on, and that's not going to be counted as one of the available actions that is available for it to take on its turn. After we reveal the total amount of cards that we're going to reveal based on our current gang level, again, that's going to be based on where our boss figure happens to be. Again, since I'm using the Capone player as the Enforcer here, I'm going to be drawing 1 card, 2 cards, 2 cards, 3 cards, or 3 cards. Once I've drawn the total amount of cards I'm allowed to draw onto my solo deck for my actions, I'm going to add up the total movement of all the cards drawn. So these cards can anywhere from 0 all the way up to 2, or even, basically amount of movement on them. I'm going to add up the total amount of movement, and the Enforcer is going to move from that district into the next district based on the math that we're going to create here. So just go ahead and show this nice and easy on the camera right here. Let's say we get 2 cards for the Enforcer because that's how far they managed to level up. I would flip over 2 cards, and I'm going to add up the total amount of movement. If I happen to be on space number 1 right here, 1 plus 2 is 3. I'm going to go from district number 1 to district number 3. That's nice and easy. Don't forget that the enforcer miniature, or if you play with a little token, I don't play with token because I think a miniature is pretty darn cool, but if the enforcer miniature is in a district, they have presence in that specific district. So that means they can move their thugs from their board onto this district. They can do actions here, even though they don't have thugs, even though they don't have cards here, they still have presence in that area because you always have presence anywhere you have your enforcer. But the enforcer is not a thug. They don't modify cards based on thug count in a district. They also don't reduce the defense of a neighborhood by having thugs in a neighborhood. The enforcer is never a thug, he is always the enforcer. The only thing he does is give himself presence in specific areas. After we figure out our total amount of movement that we're going to gain, we're going to add up the total amount of basic power that we have for all of our actions. Now in this case, let's say I happen to have 2 actions that are available for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the very first action, I'm going to read that action. In this case, it says, the enforcer sends 1 thug to the underworld to sell in a neighborhood. My total amount of power, if I can do that, if I happen to have at least 1 thug in my safe house who's able, my headquarters is able to take that action. As long as I have 1 thug in the headquarters able to take that action, I will have a total amount of power equal to 2. Now, like I said earlier, the enforcer uses an attribute of power. Power represents their influence and also represents their muscle. So power is a total statistic that represents both muscle and influence. Don't forget that. So in this example, if I was doing this action, this was available action to me, I would place my cube down because I have 2 actions only for the enforcer. I have 1 muscle from my basic, plus 1, and since my board is not leveled up, at least in this example, I haven't gained any level ups here in this example right here, my total amount of power I have is going to be 2. I'm going to simply send a thug over here into the underworld. Like I said, send 1 thug to the underworld and sell in the neighborhoods. So since I move over here, we're going to follow standard actions. I would gain 1 point of crime rate right there. And then I'm going to do a sale based on a total of 2 total power, meaning that I have 2 effective stat of influence. Remember, power represents influence. So I'd have a 2 amount of influence power to do a sale in the neighborhood, which means I get to follow the normal actions that are required here, plus the changes that come along with the enforcer powers. I'll explain how the enforcer takes actions when I cover every single one of the actions, just to make sure you understand exactly how that's going to work. After I do that, I'm going to look at the next order in turn in a line like I'm reading from a book. And I'm going to look over here and it says, if the enforcer controls all neighborhoods in the current district, the enforcer moves next to the most profitable neighborhood you control. And you is you as the player. So I'm going to look at this and let's say that we see that he does not control the neighborhood. So we're not going to do that action. We're going to skip that action. So we're going to go down 1 row and start reading the next action right here. It says, if the current district has at least 1 neighborhood not controlled by the enforcer sends as many thugs as muscle required, as power, I apologize, as many thugs as power to the district, leaving at least 2 thugs in the headquarters. And I have plus 1 to do that action. Well, this current action does fit now. So I'm going to have a total amount of power of equal to 2. So I'm going to look at this. I'm going to send as many thugs as power to that district. So I'm going to take 2, but I need to leave at least 2 back in my headquarters. Now, if I look over here, I only have 3 left over there because I took one of my actions of putting 1 in the underworld right here. So I can only take 1 thug, and I'm going to place it right here in the same district I happen to be. This is my total amount of muscle, just like that, and now I'm finished. That's basically an enforcer's turn because I only had 2 actions available to him. Now the player would get to take their turn. It's a lot easier than it seems. It gets into a very nice flow as you start playing the game more and more. Take everything nice and easy, step by step, and you'll get through it pretty darn easy. You'll see the AI works pretty darn well. To be totally fair, the hardest thing to remember when you're playing as an enforcer player is just to make sure that you add in your bonus power that you may gain if you've leveled up that skill for your gang. That's one of the things that I occasionally forget. Also, I occasionally forget the ring, especially when I'm trying to film a playthrough video for all the internet to watch. Bane of my existence is this ring. It's awesome, but when you're playing a game on a video, you're going to make mistakes. It always happens. It's like Murphy's Law. It's like Murphy just sits on your shoulder and just starts laughing at you every second. almost. Anyways, that's basically how the flow of the turn is going to go. The enforcer is going to check for actions. Once they're done, you're going to get your turn. You're going to take any actions you want to do, going back to the enforcer's turn. This is going to continue as long as the enforcer has at least one card in their draw pile to formulate their plan. If at any time the enforcer has no cards in their draw pile to formulate their plan, then they're going to go ahead and take a reorganization phase. And it's going to be a slightly modified reorganization phase where the enforcer is actually going to steal resources from us. Resources as in money, as in victory points. Other than that, it's mostly similar as a reorganization phase. The important thing to understand is if the enforcer has at least one card in their draw pile, they must take an action phase, even if they can't draw up their total hand. Remember in this game, you never shuffle your discard pile to draw extra cards. Not even the enforcer gets to cheat like that. The enforcer will draw as many cards as their hand size. As long as they have at least one card in their draw pile, then they're going to take their actions based on the cards they have laid out before them. If at any time the enforcer has no cards to draw from their C pile, then and only then they will take a reorganization phase, and then will carry on as a standard gameplay happens to carry out. That makes it sound more complicated than it really is. I just want to make things super duper clear to everybody and make the gameplay very understandable for everybody watching out there, helping you understand how to play Scarface 1920 as a solo game. Now that I've explained all that stuff, let's go ahead and explain exactly how all the 15 actions of the game are a little bit different for the enforcer player. And then let's go ahead and move into actually showing you how the game plays so you can see the flow and the ebb of exactly how Scarface 1920 plays as a solo game. Or, multiplayers versus the enforcer AI. So let's go ahead and cover how actions are performed by the enforcer and show the differences between their actions versus a standard player action. Let's go ahead and start things with the action of going ahead and hiring an associate for the enforcer player. Now the enforcer player generates one resource, and that's one resource only, and that's a resource of power. Their power that they generate is going to be used for influence, and it's also going to be used for muscle. So anytime an action requires muscle, it's going to be factored on the enforcer's power. Anytime anything requires us to figure out influence, again, that's going to be the power that is going to be generated by the enforcer. So muscle and influence is replaced for the enforcer by generating power. Now, when the enforcer takes the action of hiring an associate, they're going to take the action mostly the same from the way a single player would do it. They're going to generate a total amount of power, and that's going to decide how most powerful of the associate they can hire, because they're going to hire the most expensive associate they can ever afford, and that's going to give them victory points at the end of the game. Remember, these associates never go into their hand. The enforcer only gains these associates as victory points at the end of the game, and I'll show you how that works when we get to that point. But let's just go ahead and show you exactly how this will work if the enforcer has ever taken the action of hiring an associate. Let's say we happen to place out 2 cards into our plan for the enforcer player. And let's say the action we have to take is hiring an associate. We would do the standard action of taking one of our thugs and sending them from our headquarters and sending them into the underworld. And again, that's going to give us 1 raise up on our current crime rate. After that, we're going to total up the total amount of the total amount of power that we're going to generate. And that's going to decide the most powerful card that we can purchase based on power versus the stars that each one of these associates cost. So in this example, let's say I generated a total of 2 power. I'm going to look at all these associates out here and figure out that I can only hire this associate, and this associate, who are all 1 stars. I can't afford this one because it costs 3. Can't afford these 2 because both those cost 4 apiece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at all the ones I can afford from the most expensive one as an enforcer player, and they are just going to purchase it. Now, if there's ever a tie for the most expensive card that the enforcer can purchase, they're going to purchase the one that's the furthest to the left. So in this case, we see that's the World War I veteran because we generated 2 total power. So they're simply going to take the World War I veteran, and they're going to place this World War I veteran off to the side, and you might as well just avoid confusion yourself. Place this off to the side next to your game board face down so you don't get confused. Then what you're going to do is you're either going to take a B solo AR card if it's a 1 through 3 star associate, or you're going to take an A solo AI card if the associate gained is a 4 or 5 star associate. In this case, we see that it was a 1 through 3 star, so we're simply going to take one of the B cards from the solo deck. And then at this point, we're going to try, if we can, to spend alcohol in an effort to put this card on the top of our draw pile, on the top of our solo C deck. The cost that we're going to have to spend as the enforcer is going to be based on the level of the associate that we hired. If it's a 1 to 3 star associate, we're going to spend 1 alcohol barrel. If it's a 4 or a 5 star associate, we're going to spend 2 alcohol barrels. And they're basically going to take it from their surplus first. Then they'll take it from any one of the businesses that they have out there that can't make a sale, and then they'll take it from the deals. They always take from their deals last. After we do that, if we can afford it, it's going to go on the top of the draw deck. If we cannot afford it, it's going to go into the discard pile specifically for us. Then what we will do is we will simply refill the deck like we normally do as if a normal player made this transaction. So the important thing to understand here is the enforcer never gains the associates. They're just basically worth victory points for them at the end of the game. Instead, they're either going to get a B solo card or they're going to get an A solo card, and then they're going to try to purchase it to put it on the top of their draw pile. If they can afford it, they will do so. If they can't afford it, then it's going to go into the discard pile. Super simple, nice and easy to do. Doesn't take that much. Just basically follow the actions, and that's the action of hiring an associate for the enforcer player. Next up, we have getting a job. Now, when the enforcer gains a job, it doesn't matter how much power they generate. They're simply going to take the top job from the job deck, and this is the job that's going to go into effect for them. Now, they never have to put jobs into play because they are immediately going to be placed next to all the other jobs that they have out there. Don't forget that instants are still going to be kept because these cards allow the enforcer to steal resources from us during the reorganization phase. I'll explain how that works when we get to that point, but just remember, don't discard these instants. It's very important. Simply take these cards and place them next to the power cards that are the job cards that are already in play for the enforcer, because they're going to give them more and more powers as the game goes on. Simple, nice and easy. Just simply take the top card and it's going to be added to the enforcer's deck. Next up, we have the action of getting a deal. Now, getting a deal is just like gaining a job. We're simply going to take the top card from the dealer's deck. Don't reveal it. This is going to be placed face down with the rest of the deals that we currently have, but it's going to be placed face down, and this is effectively a generic deal. Now, notice I did not add it onto any of the deals that are currently active. I created another deal for the enforcer player. Now, this deal effectively has set stats for the rest of the game. Now that it's face down, it can effectively hold 1 thug, it can hold 1 resource, and every time it's going to be used to gain resources, it's going to gain 2 resources, either 2 alcohol or 2 guns, or 1 of each. So it becomes one of those deals. That's the value of that deal for the rest of the game. The gun runner is always going to be worth 2 guns. The distillery owner is always going to be worth 3 alcohol barrels, but the face-down deals always have that standard generic resource available to them, and that's what they're going to produce for the rest of the game for the enforcer player. Not for the regular players, just for the enforcer player. That's very important to understand. Next up, we have the action of selling in the neighborhoods. Now, the enforcer is going to sell as efficiently and as smartly as possible. But before we go on and explain all this, I need to explain to you the concept of surplus. Every single neighborhood that the enforcer controls is going to gain resources from it, and the enforcer will always sell from the surplus before they sell from anywhere else. Where is surplus gained from? Well, surplus is anything beyond what it takes to make a sale in a neighborhood. So this neighborhood right here that we see is controlled by the Capone player has 1 alcohol and 3 guns. So the surplus here is 2 guns. This neighborhood has a requirement of 3 alcohol and a requirement of 0 guns. That means the only surplus we have here is 2 guns, since we don't have a surplus of alcohol to make a sale there. This neighborhood right here we see has 4 alcohol and 1 gun. So the surplus here is 1 gun. And then finally, this neighborhood has 2 alcohol and 2 guns. So the surplus here is 1 alcohol and the surplus here is 1 gun. That's the concept of surplus. So anytime the enforcer needs to make a sale, it's going to look for its surplus first, then it's going to start dipping into its neighborhoods when it doesn't have surplus left over. Then and only then, there's nothing left in its neighborhoods to start dipping into. Then it's going to start taking resources from its deals. Again, it plays smart. It keeps its resources back on its deals as long as possible. But when we need to make a sale in the neighborhood, the first thing the enforcer needs to do, like a standard selling in a neighborhood action, they need to spend their thug. That's no different for the enforcer. But when they do that, they're going to find the neighborhoods based on the total amount of power generated. Remember, the power generated is going to act as their total amount of influence, and that's going to tell them how many neighborhoods they can sell in, just like normal. Here's the difference, though. They're going to find the neighborhoods that they can make sales in that are also going to produce the most amount of money. So if we manage to produce as the enforcer 2 power, we're going to look at all these neighborhoods that we can possibly make sales in. They're going to start looking at the neighborhoods that produce the most money. That'll be this neighborhood. And then we're going to see if we can make a sale there. Yes, we can make a sale there. If we make a sale there, we're going to do that using surplus first, then the neighborhood resources, then any deals we may have. And if we have any power left over, we're going to look for another neighborhood that also produces a lot of money. This neighborhood will be the next one that produces a lot of money. It produces 14 money, so we'll look at it, but we see it does not produce enough resources. Let's say we don't have any money back on our or any resources on our deals, so we're not going to choose a neighborhood, so now they're going to move into the next neighborhood. Since both these neighborhoods have a total value of 12. We can make sales in both these neighborhoods, so now we have another tie. How do we break this tie now at this point? Well, at this point, now they're going to choose the neighborhood that has the lowest district token in it. 2 district, 4 district, this one has the lowest district number in it, so now we're going to figure out this is going to be the district it's going to be the sale in. So, most money, available resources, tie broken by the lowest district number. Nice and easy, but other than that, that's going to be a basic way they're going to make sales. Their power is going to dictate how many neighborhoods they're going to sell in, just like a normal player would. Next up, let's go ahead and cover recruitments. They're going to do as many recruitments based on the power they generate, and they're always going to do the recruitments in their safe houses first. So for example, if we produce a total amount of 5 power, that means we would get 5 recruitments. So they're going to recruit everything from their safe house first. So recruitment 1, recruitment 2, recruitment 3, now that we have somebody back in our safe house, recruitment 4, and then we would get recruitment number 5. Again, they're always going to recruit from their safe house because they are going to recruit smartly. Now we come to the action of selling to the authorities. Still need to spend a thug just like normal. Whenever we are going to sell to the authorities, we need to figure out where they're going to get their supplies from. And again, the total amount of sales they can make is going to be based on the total amount of power they generate. Just again, like I said, power is influence. Power for them is also muscle. So we're going to figure out the total amount of power we're going to make, and then we're going to start making sales from all our neighborhoods. But first, they're going to start picking surplus from the neighborhoods that produce the least amount of profit for them. So looking out here, we would see the surplus would come from here, and the surplus would come from here. But we have a tie again. How are we going to break this tie? Well, we're going to break the tie now with the neighborhood that has the highest number. This is the opposite of selling in neighborhoods. When we sell to authorities, we pick the highest district number of the tie, and when we sell to the neighborhoods, we're going to pick the lowest district number to break that tie. We're going to look for surplus. If there's no surplus available, then we're going to move on to the next priority criteria for the enforcer, which will be the neighborhood that has the inability to make a sale at all. Remember, we're going to take resources from our deals last for the enforcer. So we're going to look at this neighborhood because let's say all of these surplus was gone from the enforcer. So since we have no surplus here, we're going to look at the lowest value neighborhood that can't actually make a sale, which will be this neighborhood right here because we don't have enough alcohol and we don't have enough, well, it does take guns. We don't have enough alcohol here. So we would sell the surplus from here, and then we would sell that right there because now we are not looking at surplus anymore because we can't make a sale in that neighborhood. So again, like I said, the AI is going to try to sell as smart as possible. If there's nothing there by looking at all the neighborhoods, then and only then it's going to start resorting to its deals to go ahead and make as many sales as it can based on the total amount of power produced by taking the action of selling to the authorities. Now there's one final little tiebreaker that's very important when we're selling to the authorities. If the enforcer player ever has a choice between an alcohol or selling a gun because everything else happens to be tied, they're going to sell alternately by going alcohol, gun, by alternating back and forth, making sure they're keeping their supplies as even as possible. But they're going to start the alternating by picking guns first. So that's the only way that goes. That's the tiebreaker right there. For the adding business markers action, that's actually going to be pretty darn quick and easy. The total amount of power is how many business markers the enforcer is going to purchase. And if they have 5 power, they're going to buy 5 businesses. We're going to pick them randomly, and then we're going to lay them out on the businesses that we control based on certain criteria in this basic order. First thing the enforcer is going to do is pick one of the neighborhoods they control that offers the highest profit level. So 19 versus 14, this would be the neighborhood that would go ahead and get it. If there's ever a tie among those, then they're going to go ahead and look at the one that lacks the least amount of resources to make a sale. And if there's still a tie, we're simply going to look at the districts that have the lowest number district token on it. That's going to be the one that's going to be the final tiebreaker. The next action we'll look at is removing a control marker. Now, the enforcer player is going to remove control markers based on the total amount of power that they manage to generate. And again, this is going to be multiples of 5. So if they manage to produce 15 power, that does mean they can remove 3 control markers that you happen to control. Now, if we're playing a multiplayer game, this is where you have to get a little bit into figuring out with the other players exactly who's going to be hit here. But there's a different way to break down. There's basically a hierarchy that the enforcer player is looking for when it's going ahead and removing control markers from all the players involved in the game. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to look at that neighborhood with the highest level of profit that it does, or I'm sorry, that's controlled by the other player or other players, and that's going to be its first target. Now there's multiple neighborhoods that happen to have the same amount of the highest profit level. Then it's going to look for the neighborhood that has the least requirements to go ahead and make a sale. Actually, let me say it in a better way. The least missing resources to go ahead and make a sale. That's what's specifically looking for, the neighborhood with the least amount of missing resources to make a sale. And then finally, if there's going to be a tie, you know what the final tiebreaker is. We're going to go back to looking at the district number. And again, we're going to look for the district with the lowest number. If it happened to be between these two tied districts, we would go ahead and pick this district over that district over there. The reduction of the crime level is pretty darn easy. For every point of power that the enforcer produces, they're going to reduce their crime level down by 1 level. Again, just like the standard rules, no player can ever go down to level of or below the current level of Elliot Ness. So if Elliot Ness happens to be at level 2, again, nobody can go below that level. So even if he produces more power than needed to go down by the total levels, it's still not going to happen because you can never go to Elliot Ness's or below Elliot Ness's level. That is also a good time to go ahead and let you know that if it happens to be a situation like this, Elliot Ness happens to be at this level, let's say the enforcer, Al Capone himself, had to be at this level right now and he produced 5 power, and the action card told him to take the reduce the crime level action, we would see he would not get an actual benefit from that at all. So he would actually skip that action. He wouldn't perform that action at all. Because remember, the enforcer player is going to take actions that have some effect, even if it's a minimal effect. If there is at least a minimal amount of effect, they're going to take it. If it's not going to do anything for them at all, even if they could do it, but it doesn't do anything for them at all, they're not going to take that action. Remember, the enforcer does play smart. Next thing we do is we can retrieve our thugs from prison. Do note that the way we're going to retrieve the thugs from the prison is going to be listed on the card. Just follow the instructions. The card will tell you how to go ahead and take that action. Next thing we can do is we can go ahead and send our thugs to go out here into the districts that we happen to have on the board. Now the card will tell you exactly how to figure out which district they're going to go to, but don't forget the most important thing is that the enforcer figure itself does give the enforcer player presence in the area it happens to be in. So since we have at least one vehicle here and a control mark here, yes, we have presence here. But even if the enforcers happen to be in this area, even though they don't have any control markers, any vehicles, any thugs or anything, they still have presence here because the enforcer figure does give them presence in a district on the board. Next up, we have the action of actually moving the thugs that happen to be on the board. And when we move thugs who happen to actually be on the board, we're going to follow a certain amount of criteria based on exactly what the action tells us to do. But the basic way we're going to look at this is we're going to look at a hierarchy again, and we're going to pick the thugs who are closest to the target district first. So for example, if this happened to be the target district, these would all be eligible thugs to go ahead and move. If the situation was more like this, and the target district was this one, then these would be the 2 thugs who would move first because they are the ones closest to the target district. Next up, if we still have power left over to move thugs, and we've picked all the thugs in the adjacent districts, next we're going to look for districts that happen to have vehicles plus thugs, and then we're going to start moving from those next. Remember, cars and trucks both share abilities with them, so the thugs can move with the cars and the thugs can move with the trucks perfectly fine. And they're also going to influence the amount of defense for the neighborhoods because cars and trucks for the enforcer are pretty much interchangeable. And then finally, if there's no thugs in districts with cars or trucks, then finally we're going to look for a district that has cars and trucks in it only, and those will be the cars and trucks we're going to move if we have enough power to do so. Remember, the amount of thugs we're going to move is going to be based on the total amount of power that we produce. Remember, enforcer uses power, not muscle, not influence. Next up, we have the action of seizing the neighborhood. Now, when it comes to seizing a neighborhood, don't forget we can only seize neighborhoods where we have presence. And again, not to reemphasize again, but the enforcer does give us presence so we can make sure that we can go ahead and do that. But we simply need to have presence in the area we want to go ahead and take care of. But again, the enforcer does not offer any strength towards that. They just give us presence only. It's very important to make sure you remember that. And if there happens to be multiple neighborhoods that could be a potential target for us to go ahead and take over as the enforcer player, we're going to go ahead and pick the neighborhood target based on a hierarchy again, just like we've done in the prior actions. And the hierarchy is going to be based on, first they'll pick one of the players' neighborhoods. Next thing they'll do is they'll pick a neighbor that gives them the highest amount of profits. And then finally, they're going to pick the neighborhood that has the highest amount of defense on it. Those are going to be the tiebreakers in that specific order. And now we come to the upgrading the gang action, which is the one that's going to cause maybe a little bit of confusion when you're trying to figure out exactly how to do this. Now, when the enforcer player is upgrading their gang, they're going to have to pay costs just like a player would have to do so. But the skill we're going to upgrade is going to be based on the district we happen to be in. The district we happen to be in is the first skill we're going to try to upgrade, as long as we can afford to do so. If we can't afford to upgrade that specific skill, we're going to look at the next numeric skill. And I'll show you what that looks like right now on the gang board. You notice that every single game board is going to have a certain amount of numbers right down here. Now, I already showed you over on the player board that the Capone player is currently in the number 1 district right now. So that means if they were told to take the upgrade action, they would take the recruiter's action as long as they had enough resources to do it. And just like a player, they can't skip levels, but if we happen to already level up recruiters once, and if we had enough resources, we can go ahead and take the upgrade action a second time. But if we get to a chance where we have to take the upgrade action, but we don't have the right resource for that specific upgrade action based on the neighborhood we happen to be in, we're going to pick the next neighborhood in numerical level, again, wrapping back when we get back to 7. So in this case, Capone will try for recruiters, and then if he's in District 2, he's also going to try for recruiters. If that doesn't work, he's going to try for dealer supply, then he's going to try for vehicles, then nightclubs, then for power, and then for lawyers, and then if nothing happens, and if we're either going to wrap back around, or they're basically not going to have the resources they need to do an upgrade action. If they can't do it, remember, they're going to skip that action. The Capone player or the enforcer will only take the action they can actually do. But basically, the district that we happen to be in is going to be the district that they are going to be associated with the skill. So like I said, District 1 means that they'd be upgrading skill number 1. If they happen to be in District number 7, they would upgrade skill number 7. Again, that's the basic idea of how they're going to upgrade their gangs. Going to follow the same way. If we upgrade, we're going to put one of the cubes over. We're going to advance our boss figure. We're going to gain crime level. We're going to possibly gain extra resources such as money, but also, like I showed you earlier, this is a way that we may possibly unlock some more of our more powerful solo cards, our A and our B cards. Instead of the enforcer, like a normal player, getting our right-hand men, they gain more A cards and they gain more B cards, and I'll show you exactly how that works right now. If the enforcer ever unlocks a skill that tells them to gain an A card, a B card, or an A or a B card by advancing along the track, they are simply going to gain the A or the B card, respectively, depending on where their boss figure moves into. The cool thing to understand here, though, is that if the enforcer player has 2 barrels of alcohol, they're going to take that card, or cards, in the case of the A and B up here, they're going to spend 2 barrels of alcohol, and that card or cards is going to go on top of their draw deck. And again, it's a flat 2 barrels of alcohol cost. So if we look over here and they happen to go to the A level, 2 barrels of alcohol. If they go to the B level, 2 barrels of alcohol. If they go all the way up to the A and B level, yep, you guessed it, still 2 barrels of alcohol. And in that case, they're going to gain both of those cards. They're going to go on top of their draw deck, ensuring that those cards are going to come out next turn. The final action the enforcer can take is the action of gaining deals from their dealers. Now, to show you how this works is I'm going to go ahead and give the enforcer a couple of extra deals, because you're going to see how this can exponentially give the enforcer player a lot more resources by continuing to do these deal actions. Because when the enforcer player takes the deal action, they gain a lot of resources, unlike the pitiful amount of resources we get in comparison. So when they take the action, just like standard, they're going to pay a certain amount of resources, move their thugs to the specific action spaces. But when they move their thugs to the action space, they are going to take one of the thugs and they're going to move them onto any one of the deals that currently do not have a thug on that deal right now. When they do so, then they're going to gain the total amount of resources for all of the deals they control. Not the deal they place the thug on, but they're going to gain a total amount of resources based on all of the deals they control this time. So in this case, if I happen to take my thug, placing it right here, I would gain 2 guns, 3 alcohol, then 2 of either guns and alcohol, and then 2 more of guns and alcohol. But the way they're going to do this is they're going to keep this as even as possible, make sure they're gaining an even amount of each kind of resource. Show you how that works. So in this example, we see that the enforcer would gain 2 guns, 3 alcohol, and 2 unknown, and 2 unknown. So to make this nice and easy, I will show you we'd gain 2 guns, and then we would gain 3 alcohol. And then these, we're going to make sure we keep this as even as possible in an effort to make sure they gain an even amount of resources. If there's ever a time where the enforcer needs to gain an uneven amount of resources, such as more guns than alcohol or more alcohol than guns, then and only then we're going to break the tiebreaker in the favor of alcohol, because the enforcer player prefers to get alcohol for these kind of tiebreakers. But this is the total amount of resources we gain, and just like normal, we place these resources on our dealers as much as possible, and then we go ahead and add those extra resources onto our deals. Extra resources beyond our deals are going to go out onto our neighborhoods. And the way we're going to place these resources out on the board is we're going to place them out on neighborhoods that allow us to make the most and best deals for the enforcer player. So they're going to put the resources out on their best neighborhoods first, filling them up in an effort to make sure that they have everything equally able to go ahead and make sales to the best of their abilities. Anything beyond that is going to be surplus, and we're going to add surplus under neighborhoods one by one on every single neighborhood, alternating between them, making sure that we have an even spread across the board completely. But it's going to work a little bit differently when we're filling out the neighborhoods, though, because they're going to put out all other alcohol in neighborhoods first. Then we're going to go ahead and calculate all other guns out in all the neighborhoods second. So basically the way this is going to work is we're going to work on filling up the neighborhoods, and then we're going to go fill in the surplus on all the alcohol one at a time. Then we're going to do the surplus on the guns one at a time, and that's how we're going to get all of our surplus resources out into the neighborhoods for the enforcer player. I hope that makes sense. If not, leave questions down below. I'll try to explain it a little bit better, but I think you get the hang of exactly how to put the resources from our deals when we go out there and make the deals with the dealers, placing resources on the dealers, and then extra resources out on the board, trying to fill up deals to make purchases, or I'm sorry, to make sales in the neighborhoods first, then dealing with the surplus of the alcohol, then dealing with the surplus of the guns. It's pretty easy. You should be able to get it, just maybe once or twice to get it, but after that you'll have it just fine. So the only thing left to explain is how to do reorganization turn. And like I said, the reorganization turn is a little bit different from the enforcer player. Let's go ahead and explain exactly how it works, because that's when they're going to start stealing some of our resources. During the enforcer's turn, they're going to sell in every single one of their neighborhoods. Again, we're going to start with the highest value neighborhoods, and we're going to go ahead and sell in all the neighborhoods that we can make sales in. Again, they're going to do their best to sell as efficiently as possible. That's the best way to remember it when we're trying to figure this out. They're going to sell as efficiently as possible to make the most amount of money. Next thing they're going to do, just like normal, they're going to gain money for every single business that they happen to control out there on the board, just like a standard player. But now we get to the area where the enforcer player gets to pull some mean things on the player. Because the enforcer player is going to add up the total amount of jobs that they currently have. They're going to multiply it by how many cars are currently in the current news stack right here, and that's how much money they're going to steal from the player. Now remember how way back earlier in the video, how I explained that you might have to make some adjustments and try to read the quiet letter of the law when it comes to this game? I personally could not figure out, when you're playing a multiplayer game versus the AI, if the enforcer is going to steal from all players or if they're going to target one player particularly. I personally think, from rules as written, that the enforcer player is going to steal from all players on the board equally, and I can't find anything that makes me think otherwise. So I'm going to coach that that's the proper way to do it, but I'd be happy for any of the employees of redzen or anybody else to go ahead and correct me on this one. And when we have multiple players versus the AI, my assumption is that the AI is going to steal from all the players equally. But if I'm wrong, leave comments down below, and I'll leave comments down in the show notes. And this is also a great time to mention that always check out the show notes for all my videos. Just in case there's any errors or any mistakes I make, I always leave them commented in the show notes. Especially when we get to the point we're about to get to very, very shortly, which is where I'm going to play the game. And we all know when I get to playing the game, that's when Murphy likes to hang out on my shoulder. But back on point, after the enforcer steals money from the player and or players, then they're going to do a standard recruitment action based on the recruiter's number. And again, we're always going to start recruiting with our safe houses first, moving into our headquarters. If our safe house happens to be empty, then we're going to start recruiting from our slums, because that's the next way in the order that we're going to go to. Now, there's just a couple different rules I want to cover about the board game when we're playing with the solo rules. These are just a couple rules that you want to make sure that you remember. Many of these I've already mentioned, but I'm going to put them in this nice block section right here with the timestamp, so you can see the good amount of rules that kind of maybe gotcha moments for most of the players when you play the game. One of the big ones I've already covered is the fact that the enforcer the enforcer miniature itself gives it presence in any single location the enforcer happens to be in. Next up, we also know that the districts are going to wrap, and we also count in ascending order. So if we need to move 2 spaces, we're currently on space number 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. Well, we're going to wrap back all the way over to 1. So it's basically always in ascending order from 1 through 7. That 7 wraps back over to number 1 immediately after. Next up, the enforcer, unlike me when I play this game on video, never forgets to take money whenever they have the ring. If you ever forget to do so, the rules say that when you're playing with other humans, if the humans forget to do so, well, it's too bad, they missed the opportunity. The AI, the enforcer, never forgets to take the money, and if it happens to do so, you will retcon it and give it the money it's missing from having the ring. And remember, you always get the ring by hiring associates. Even though the enforcer, when they hire associates, does not keep cards, they can still take the ring. So you got to make sure you understand that. They can still get that ring, still get the benefits of the ring at the start of every one of the enforcer turns. Next up, like I said, the enforcer is a dirty cheater, and they are absolutely immune to bribery, and they never have to worry about it when they play the game. You're not so lucky, but hey, the enforcer is a dirty cheater. Don't forget the enforcer treats their cars and their trucks exactly the same. They both share powers. So their trucks reduce defense and their cars help when it comes to sales into specific neighborhoods. It's a nice ability the neighborhood, or the nice ability the enforcer has. Don't forget there is a job that actually gives you that power too, and it basically copies that power, but for the enforcer, that power is always in effect. Generally speaking, if we ever have a tiebreaker when the enforcer needs to pick between multiple districts that all seem to meet the same criteria, almost all the time the enforcer is going to pick the lower number district when it comes to picking the tiebreaker for the criteria. Don't forget the specific definition of what exactly surplus is. Surplus is any resources in a neighborhood beyond what it takes to make a sale. Surplus will be mentioned quite often, so it's a definition you want to make sure you understand very, very well. Whenever we have to pick them from various different thugs, and when we're trying to figure out where we're going to do hits, kills, and putting into prison, we're going to take thugs from the following different locations based on the terminology used on the board. For example, if we have to put a thug in prison, we're going to pick thugs that happen to be coming from the underworld first. Next, we're going to pick thugs that come from the authorities. Next, they're going to come from our personal deals, from our headquarters, and then finally thugs from our districts. But when we have to perform hits and kills, they're going to go ahead and start picking from the underworld first, from the prison next, from the authorities finally, then to the deals, then to the headquarters, and then finally they're going to finish up with all the districts when we need to pick thugs that hit, kill, or put based on the criteria for those specific cards that may come into play. Finally, if we ever have to remove business markers from any of the districts, they're first going to pick the district that has the lowest amount of profit first. Then they're going to pick the neighborhood that has the least amount of alcohol and guns available to make a sale. Then finally, we're going to pick the neighborhood in the district with the highest token number. If the enforcer ever has to lose any of their upgrades, they're going to pick their level 3 upgrades first. Again, trying to match the current district that they happen to be in first. They're going to go for the level 3 upgrades first, and then they're going to lose the level 2 upgrades next. That's going to basically be how they're going to break their ties when it comes to picking among those. Don't forget that any neighborhood that currently has enough resources on it to make a sale is a neighborhood that's considered supplied. Any neighborhood that does not have enough resources on to make a sale is a neighborhood that's considered unsupplied. And then finally, anytime the enforcer needs to store resources, they're first going to start by storing guns on deals. Then if they have any room left over to store additional supplies, then they're going to store alcohol on any of their deals. And then finally, anytime the enforcer needs to store supplies, first they're going to start by storing supplies on any open dealers that they may have. And they're going to start alternating, but they're going to start with guns. So they're going to store a gun and alcohol in that order. Then if they have any other resources that they need to store in neighborhoods, they're going to go ahead and start any neighborhood that will allow them to get enough resources, basically picking an unsupplied neighborhood, the most profitable unsupplied neighborhood, and we're going to pick all the alcohol and put them out there in the neighborhoods, taking care of all the alcohol. Once we've stored all the alcohol in the neighborhoods, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to store guns in all of the neighborhoods. Again, trying to fill up the deals first, and then we're going to go from there, just go one neighborhood at a time once all the neighborhoods have considered become supplied. And of course, the game is going to come to an end just in the standard way. We're going to add up all of our victory points. The enforcer players are going to get victory points the standard way, and the normal players are going to get their victory points the standard way too. The only thing I didn't mention is don't forget that the amount of money the enforcer has is always known to the players because the enforcer player never uses a shield. Now, it's not specified in the rules, but my assumption is that when you're playing multiple players versus the AI, the players still keep their shields. And that actually makes the most sense to me, but I am saying this as an assumption. The rules don't actually specify that, but I think rules as intended, when you're playing multiple players versus the AI, I do believe all the players definitely should keep their shields. Just the enforcer doesn't do it, which makes for an interesting gameplay mechanic as the players see how much money the enforcer is quickly gaining, kind of judging which kind of actions they'll be taking on future turns. Now that I've explained how to play the game, let's go ahead and show the game with the solo rules. Now, I'm not going to make this be a full, complete game through because this video is already running fairly decently long with the tutorial aspect to it. So I'm going to play probably let's go for about maybe 45 minutes to an hour tops. So we'll see how far we get. This is basically just let you see how the game plays. I have plenty of other videos in the whole video series you can check out that tells you everything you want to know about the game of Scarface 1920. I have everything, I think, reset back to the way it was when I originally set up. Let's go ahead and start things. And remember, the enforcer is a starting player, and the enforcer gets to start everything by going ahead and starting by drawing their solo mode cards. Now, don't forget, since they are the basic level for them right now, they are going to draw one card, and they're going to take 2 actions. I have 2 action cubes out here just as a nice, gentle reminder for myself. But I have the solo cards out right here just so you can see the actions nice and easy. I think it'd be easier than flipping back and forth between all the cameras. Plus, it lowers the risk of me forgetting to switch a camera, which is always embarrassing when I forget to do that. Always embarrassing. First solo mode card we will reveal is going to be a movement of 2 and a muscle of 1. So let's handle the movement of 2 first. We're going to go from 1 all the way to 3, which will be this district over here. And now we will take our action cubes. Action number 1. If the current district has at least one neighborhood not controlled by the enforcer moves as many thugs, cars, or trucks as their muscle to the district. Well, we have a total muscle of 2 right now. We can do this move at least partially at this time, so that means they will do it. So we have a total of 2 muscle. We will take this car and we will drive that car right over there. Next thing, the enforcer seizes one neighborhood in the current district. 1 versus 3, not going to happen. The enforcer sends one of their thugs to the underworld to sell in the neighborhoods. So, can we sell in a neighborhood that we have right now? Well, unfortunately, we can't sell anymore. If this would have still been over there, then we could have sold. It's not. So we're going to look at the 4th action. The enforcer upgrades their gang. So let's go ahead and look at our gang board and see what kind of upgrades we can do right now. So we happen to be in district number 3. District 3 is going to be dealer supply. We know it costs 4 money and 2 muscle right now. Well, if we go back to see what we generated 1 muscle, so that's not quite going to be doable for us. Next up, we will look to see if any of these actions require 1 muscle only. And it looks like they all require 2 muscles, so we don't even need to worry about it. The enforcer cannot complete any of those actions, so instead of taking 2 actions this turn, they're simply going to take 1 action. Not a big deal, but that's going to be it for their turn. Now we get to go to our turn and our starting hand. And I believe I showed them to you in the beginning, but just as a nice gentle reminder of the 3 jobs I have dock rendezvous, midnight shifts, and I have orphanage donations. So let's go ahead and take care of these and be as efficient as possible. Starting hand is going to be Arnold Rothstein, the lieutenant, and the bodyguards. So let's go ahead and move these a little bit better spot. I think I'm going to keep these right here just like that to make it nice and simple. So I'm thinking what I am going to do, looking at my very starting hand, is I think I'm going to start abusing Arnold Rothstein, because Arnold Rothstein has the ability that says I believe I can use a very good thing. Carry out 1 skill of an associate in the market. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. That actually works out perfectly. So I'm going to play into my plan Arnold Rothstein, and then I'm going to play the lieutenant. This is going to give me a total of 2 muscle and 2 influence, because Arnold gives me 1, plus the lieutenant is 1, but he also has 2 muscle for Arnold himself. That's going to give me 2 and 2 of each resource. So I get 3 skills to go ahead and choose from. I'm going to use the skill of the ability to use any power of an associate that happens to be currently in the marketplace. We have the Sicilian Hitman, Jewel Thief, the Moonshiner, and the Trigger Man right now. And I think I'm going to carry out the ability of the Trigger Man right now. It says each rival must give you 1 alcohol, 1 gun, or $3, their choice. Now, I think the easiest way to do this and make this as quick and as efficient as possible is we're just going to take alcohol from them. And we're going to take this alcohol and place it on top of our neighborhood right here, just like that. I still have 2 skills that I use for Arnold Rothstein left to use. I think one of them is going to be taking the family ring. I'm sure I'll forget to take the money for that at least 1,000 times for this playthrough video. Stick with me. And then finally, I can use 1 more of these abilities right here, or I can ignore the requirement of 1 of the jobs I have out here. I think let's see, 2 bodyguards, nope. Spend $10. That would be really good to do right now, actually. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to get the orphanage into play before I forget. So the orphanage, since I played a card in my plan that has a matching symbol right here, it says, if you send 1 thug to the authorities, you may pay $3 to carry out 1 recruitment and go -1 down on your current crime rate. So that'll be the very first ability that we have in our empire, our nice criminal empire going on right now. That is my hand, so I don't confuse myself. And then I still have my action available to me, and I still have 1 skill ability left from the boss, because I took the ring, I used the power. Now I can use 1 more power. Let's see what else we got here. Spend 1 alcohol for each thug you want to retrieve from. Nope, don't want to do that. No, actually, I do want to do that. This is actually going to work out perfectly. I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a hire an associate action. Remember to hire an associate? Take 1 of your thugs, you put them in an underworld, and your crime rate is going to go up by 1. Remember, I still have 1 skill use left from my boss card. I am going to hire the Sicilian Hitman right now. Now, since this is a early level, low star card, I'm going to spend 1 alcohol to make sure that he goes directly into my hand because I like that card. And then I will use the power of the Rum Runner to spend 1 alcohol to retrieve this guy from the underworld. I still have 1 alcohol on one of my deals. This guy will come out of the underworld. He'll go back into my headquarters. And I believe that is a complete action turn. So I will discard these 2 cards. I go back in my discard pile. I have 2 cards in my hand. My hand side is 3, so I will draw a card and I will get bodyguards. So now I have 2 bodyguards and I have 1 Sicilian Hitman in my hand. And now we get to go back over to the Enforcer, who will flip over their solo card and we will draw, getting a movement 1. So we'll go from 3 to 4. And then we will get our 2 action cubes because we're still looking at only 1 card and 2 actions that will perform as the Enforcer. So we have no muscle for anything. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the first one. It says the Enforcer spends 1 thug to the underworld to sell in neighborhoods. Well, they definitely don't have enough to sell in neighborhoods because I made sure that would not happen. So that was a pretty smart play on my part. If the current district has at least 1 neighborhood not controlled by the Enforcer sends as many thugs as muscle to that district, leaving at least 2 in the headquarters. So this is going to be a send action. So we have a total of 1 muscle because currently, or I'm sorry, 1 power because we don't have any power bonuses because our gang is not upgraded yet. So that means we're only going to get 1 thug. We'll place this 1 thug down right here in the west north side. West north side, right? Yep, west north side. And that will be the action, 1 of our actions taken. Next up, we're going to see the Enforcer sends 1 thug to the underworld to hire an associate. Well, we have no muscle to do that, so we can skip that. And then finally, the Enforcer upgrades their gang, having +2 to influence. Unfortunately, since I took away their resources, that's not something they're going to be able to do. So again, this is going to be another round where the Enforcer is only going to take 1 of their 2 actions. Maybe it's a little smart play on my aspect, or maybe just very fortuitous. But we'll complain and we'll go ahead and continue on with our turn. So for our turn, I have the Sicilian Hitman, I have the bodyguard, and I have a bodyguard in my hand. I think what we're going to do is I want to get a job into play. So if I can make this happen, I think... Can I... Yes. I can. Oh, I could have did this if I would have played smart last turn. Actually, I'm going to retcon my prior turn and not use the Rum Runner power, and I'm going to leave them in the underworld because I did not read all the requirements for that job, and I should have read that requirement a little bit closer. So if I was only playing 1 player, I would have been playing a little bit smarter, and I would have caught that the first time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to retcon. I did not take back from the Rum Runner power from using my boss's special power. I didn't do that. We'll leave them in the underworld. So for my actual full-fledged turn, I'm going to take a hire an associate action. I have 2 thugs in the underworld now, so that means my crime rate's going to go from 2 all the way up to 4. And then from here, I am going to put 2 cards into my plan. I still have 1 card left in my hand at this time. So we have a total production of 3 muscle and 1 influence. I'm thinking that we want to get the World War I veteran or we want to get the Moonshiner. I think we're going to take the Moonshiner. So the Moonshiner just takes 1 influence only to take him. I will spend the alcohol to put him directly into my hand. These 2 cards, do I have anything else on them that I want to do for actions? Let me look at them very, very quickly here. Bodyguards, spend 1 alcohol to move 1. No, not going to do that. Spend $1 to move 1 of your thugs. You can repeat this skill as many times as you muscle in your plan. To move your thugs. Nope. Okay. Nope. Didn't do that. I'm not going to get any of those extra abilities. That's actually going to be a quick end to my turn. I have 2 cards in my hand right now. I will draw back up to 3, gaining the lieutenant, and that will end my turn. But before we do that, I want to make sure that I remember to get this job into play. So this one required 2 associates in the world. I have it. I had to play that symbol. I did it. And I had to play that symbol into my plan, which I did. So that allows me to get a second permanent into play. Now I have orphanage, donation, and I have midnight shifts. Midnight shift says that all your cars and all your trucks are both considered to share powers, which means that my cars can reduce my costs and my trucks can go ahead and be used for my defense and also for go ahead and seizing neighborhoods. So that's going to work out perfectly for me. Now we get to go back to the enforcer, whose card is going to be this one. Take 2 cubes, and we have 1 movement, so we're going to go from 4 all the way to 5, which is going to be our district. We have 1 muscle, and the first thing we're going to read is, if the enforcer controls all neighborhoods in the current district, the enforcer moves next to the most profitable neighborhood you control. Well, he doesn't get to do it, but he is there, so we'll ignore that. The enforcer seizes 1 neighborhood in the current district. Luckily, I am just barely going to avoid that happening. Double checking, make sure I didn't make a mistake earlier. Because that was only a 2. I didn't quite have enough of the 3. So this is actually this was actually very close for us because they have a total of muscle. Luckily, my defense is 5 because I have a control marker there. 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 1 more is 6. So I'm actually defending in my neighborhood. So that's actually pretty fortuitous for me. So they cannot seize that neighborhood. The current district has at least 1 neighborhood not controlled by the enforcer. The enforcer sends as many thugs as muscle to that district, leaving at least 2 in the headquarters. Well, I have 3 in the headquarters, so this is actually an action we can take. I'm taking 1 muscle and putting that down in the south side for us. Next thing, the enforcer carries out as many recruitment as muscle. So we have a total of 3 muscle. So we will go 1, 2, 3. And we are finished with our recruitments, and we're finished with the enforcer's turn because they actually managed this time to take both of the actions on their solo card. That's it for the enforcer. Now we can go back to our turn and our 3 cards of the moonshiner, a bodyguard, and a lieutenant. And let's figure out what we want to do. I am thinking that we need alcohol to start making sales. We can also go for an upgrade, and I think an upgrade might actually be a good idea at this point. I think I want to do a vehicle upgrade, which means I'm going to need 1 muscle, and I'm going to need 1 influence. I have it. So we'll take the lieutenant, we'll take the bodyguard. I don't want to force a reorganization phase just yet, so I'm going to keep this card in my hand. Dock rendezvous deals storage at 3 or higher. It is not. 2 bodyguards, don't have it. Okay, so don't have to worry about that. I can't get that job into play just yet. So what we have here is we have a lieutenant and we have a bodyguard right now. That's going to give us 1 and 1. We are going to go ahead and upgrade our gang. So I'm going to spend the 10, which is going to leave me with $6 left over. And we are going to take the upgrade of vehicles. So I'll place this right here, put that right there. That's going to make our crime rate go up to level 5. We had the 1 influence and we had the 1 muscle. We will advance our boss up onto the track. Now our boss is 1 and 2 versus being 1 and 1. And now we get to add a vehicle to the board. And it really doesn't matter what vehicle we add because thanks to that 1 job, all of our vehicles share powers. I'll put that vehicle down where I have influence because I'm not liking the fact that he's building up his influence right there. And that will end my turn. Let's see, retrieve from district or a deal. Nope, don't want to do that. Spend, don't want to do that. That is going to end my turn. Now we draw the next card for the enforcer, and no movement at all. I don't like that. The enforcer seizes 1 neighborhood in the current district. So they have 1 total muscle. They cannot steal my neighborhood because it's very well protected. So if at least half of the enforcer neighborhoods are unsupplied, the enforcer sends 1 thug to get supply from dealers. So if at least half of the enforcer neighborhoods are unsupplied. So yes, 1 of our neighborhoods is completely unsupplied. So we have met that criteria. So we are going to send 1 of our thugs to go out there and go to our deal. So the way this is going to work, we'll take 1 of our thugs and they will go to a deal. This is going to give us 2 guns. It's going to give us 3 alcohol. And then we get 2 and 2. As long as we get more alcohol than guns, which we did, so that works out just perfectly fine. Now we got to go ahead and store those resources. So, like we said earlier, we're going to do this alternating. So we're going to go 1, 1, and 1. And then this is going to leave us with all of these resources left over that we need to figure out where we are going to store these. Fortunately, we only have one neighborhood, so it's going to be easy to figure out which neighborhood these are going to go into, because right now the enforcer only controls one neighborhood. If we had multiple neighborhoods, then we'd have to start using the various different criteria to figure out exactly which one of the neighborhoods we would have to store all these resources in. Now what we need to do is look at our next action. It says if the actions deck has at least 5 cards, it doesn't. So we ignore that. If the crime rate of the enforcer is at level 6 or more, reduce it by their current amount of muscle. It's not going to happen, so we don't need to worry about it. That is going to end the enforcer's turn. They still have 2 cards left over. And that also goes the same for me, who has a moonshiner, and I also have a bodyguards. Let's see. Gain $1 for each thug in the neighborhood or in the underworld. What do I want to do at this point? I am thinking that we want a deal. Because if I get a deal, then I'm going to get alcohol I need to make a sale, because I am quickly heading for a reorganization phase. So since I'm quickly heading for a reorganization phase, I think I'm going to play both these cards. That way I force a reorganization phase on my next turn. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get some stuff from my dealers. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to head to the alcohol supplier. So I'm going to take one of my thugs, head them over to my alcohol supplier. And I produce 2 muscle, and the alcohol supplier, as we know, just requires 1 muscle to make him work. But that is going to give me 2 alcohol. I'll store both of these alcohol, 1 on my gun supplier, 1 on my alcohol supplier. That is my actual action from my plan that I'm going to take. Now I get to do some of the abilities I have here. So it allows me to gain $1 for each one of my thugs in the underworld. I have 2 thugs in my underworld, so that means I am going to gain $2. Additionally, because I knew I was going to forget at least 1,000 times, because I should just like keep this ring on my finger. I bet that's the only way I'm ever going to actually remember to take advantage of that ring. So since I forgot about the ring, I'm going to take the couple extra dollars I forgot, because I did have the ring, and that would have made a difference. I'm sure I'm going to recon this at least 1,000 times, because whenever I play solo or whenever I play multiple players like this, I forget the ring every time. It doesn't happen when I play versus other players. Only happens when I do this. It's like a curse. Like Murphy right on my shoulder. Anyways, that's going to end my turn. I cannot use that ability. Oh, yes, actually, I can use that ability because I played that card. Take 1 alcohol for each district with 1 of your thugs. You know, I don't have any thugs out there, darn it. Okay, that could have been a heck of a lot better, but it wasn't. I should have planned better. Oh, well. That is going to be it for me. Now we got to go back to the enforcer, who, again, only has 1 card because they have not upgraded yet. They won't get out of my neighborhood. Get out of my neighborhood. My neighborhood. Okay. First action. The enforcer sends 1 thug to the underworld to hire an associate. So we'll take 1 thug, send them to the underworld. Crime rate will go up by 1, and their total amount of muscle is only 1 right now. So that means I'm going to pick one of these 2. The one furthest left will be the World War I veteran. Don't forget, they don't actually take these cards. They're going to be placed off to the side for victory points for them at the end of the game. And since we have at least 1 alcohol, we are going to take this card. I'm sorry, let me do this right. We will take a B card. There's the B card right there. It will go on top of our draw deck. Make sure it's a B card. Yes, it's a B card. And then we will spend 1 alcohol for that. And then this is going to be placed off to the side, which will be victory points for us at the end of the game. So that is our first action. Next action, if at least half of the enforcer's neighborhoods are unsupplied, not true anymore, so we escape that or ignore that. If the power is greater than the number of jobs of the enforcer sends 1 thug to the underworld to get a job. We have 3 jobs. We have 2 muscle, so that's not the case. And then finally, if the current district has at least 1 neighborhood not controlled by the enforcer moves as many thugs as muscle to that district. Ooh, that's going to be brutal. So again, we're going to look for adjacent districts, which will be all these. That doesn't count. So we're going to look for any thugs who can get inside a car in their current district. Does not count. So the only thing that's going to move over is a car. Luckily, my defense is 5, 6, 7 right here. So that means that it's going to be a little bit harder for him to take over my neighborhood, but I still got to be very, very careful about that. That is going to be it for the enforcer player. Now it gets to come back to my turn, and I get to do a reorganization phase. So at the start of the reorganization phase, $1, because I have the ring. Told you I'd remember once in a while. Next up, we are going to sell in our neighborhoods. And luckily, I can actually do a sale in our neighborhoods very, very easily. So I control this neighborhood right here. It takes 4 alcohol. I only have 2 alcohol barrels. But thanks to the job of midnight shifts, these will also count as 2 more alcohol barrels. I will take those alcohol barrels and then I will make $19 more. I'll put 1 back and then I will take 20 out, just like that. Only have 1 neighborhood I can sell in. So the only thing left to do is gain $3 for every one of the businesses I currently control. Well, I only control 1 business, so that'd be $3 more. I'll put 2 in and take a 5 out. And then if I happen to have any thugs in the authorities, or on my deals, I happen to have 1 on my deal. So I get to pull them out, and then if I had any thugs that happen to be in prison, I would also pull them out, but I don't have any thugs in prison right now. So now I guess get to carry recruitments effectively equal to my recruitment level. I have a recruitment level of 1, so I'll go from 1 from the safe house. Now that I have 3 in the headquarters, now I just simply need to shuffle my deck, and I have 2 new associate cards on my deck at this point, which are going to give me more options and, victory points at the end of the game. So I'll shuffle my deck. My current hand size happens to be 3. I take 3 cards. My new hand is going to be the Sicilian Hitman, the Lieutenant, and the Boss. That's not a bad start. That'll actually be a good start for my next turn. So the only thing left to do, advance the time marker, and then we go back to the Enforcer. Now you get to see your very first B level card. So we do have a point of movement. We are going to go from 5 all the way to 6 over here in this neighborhood. Remember, they can ignore bribery because that is the power of the Enforcer, so I don't need to worry about going into that spot right there. And now we get our 2 action cubes, and you see he gets a lot of muscle for these actions. So the Enforcer seizes 1 neighborhood next to or adjacent to the current district. Ooh, that's brutal. So we have plus 3 muscle to do this. This would take normally 3 power to take over this neighborhood, but the police officer is going to add 1 to the defense of that area. Remember, police officers only work on bribery. They don't work on actually preventing defense. They're still going to defend the neighborhoods. He just doesn't have to pay them bribery. So this effectively has a defense of 4, so we can't quite take this neighborhood, but it says right here, then sees that neighborhood or a neighborhood adjacent to the current district. Well, this is the current district. We can take over this neighborhood or we can take over this neighborhood. So the tiebreaker is going to be the neighborhood that's going to give them much more money, which is going to be this one. So they will take over this neighborhood and we will put a control marker out just like that. Next thing we're going to do is if you control more neighborhoods than the Enforcer sends 1 thug to the authorities to remove 1 control mark or to remove control markers. He has 2 neighborhoods. I have 1. I don't need to worry about that just yet. If the Enforcer has a surplus of at least 1 alcohol, the Enforcer sends 1 thug to the underworld to hire an associate. We have no surplus of alcohol because remember, surplus is anything more than what's required to make a sale here. 3, 3. There's no surplus there at all. So finally, the Enforcer gains $1 for each casino or brothel, $3 for each speakeasy, and $7 for each nightclub they may control. So they gain $1 for each casino. There's a casino right there, so they're going to gain $1. They gain, let's see, where do we go? 1 for each casino or brothel, $3 for each speakeasy. There's a speakeasy, so that is going to be $3 more. They do not control any nightclubs, so that's all they're going to get. They're going to get $4. That brings them up to $14 for the Enforcer player. That was their second action, and you start seeing how these B cards are going to be much more powerful. We don't want the Enforcer player to get any of these cards because they can be so darn nice for them. And you see how that really, really starts ramping up the difficulty for us very, very quickly. All he simply did is move over, took over a neighborhood, gained some money, and yeah, that was from his B card. Back to our turn. So we have the Sicilian Hitman, the Lieutenant, and the Boss of the 7 Gems. So he is a 1-2, he's a 2-1, so that's effectively a 3-3. That means I can upgrade any one of my gang aspects I want at this time. Plus I have boss power. I think I'm looking at doing an upgrade, although I do have the potential to have 3 influence. Triggerman could be nice, but if I get to 4, I can get that rum runner. That would cost me 1 level over there. And I would be sending 1 guy to the underworld, but it could be worth it. Tough one. What was that job I had again? Deal storage at 3 or higher. But I can ignore that. I can ignore 1 requirement. So if I did that skill twice, I could just spend... Actually, I can do it all 3 times. Because I repeat the same thing. Ignore 1 requirement when fulfilling a job. I can get this job into play. Play the boss. And get 3 influence. And use that to bring down my crime rate. Bring it all the way back down to 2. I think that's actually going to be a really good idea. And then I can use this to upgrade my gang to get my dealer supply up on my next turn. So that was my future planning right there. So into our plan, we're going to play Arnold Rothstein, which is going to give us 1 muscle and 2 influence. I will play my lieutenant to add 1 more level of influence. And then my action is I'm going to go ahead and send 1 of my thugs to the authorities, and I'm going to use that to reduce my crime rate. Now I have a total of 3 influence, so I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, keeping me back in the green in case a raid comes out. I want to be safe, because we know that the enforcer is getting close to doing a reorganization phase pretty darn quickly, meaning that we're getting close to the end of a turn. So now that I have done that, now I want to take advantage of my boss card. Now my boss card has the ability that says I can ignore 1 requirement when fulfilling a job. If I use that 3 times, I can ignore all 3 of those requirements. Now I could just ignore 2 other requirements and go ahead and do the ability of 1 of these guys out here, which also could be a really good idea. No, not going to do it. I am just simply going to use it all 3 times, and I'm going to get the Doc Rendezvous power card into play. What this says is, again, I use my skill 3 times to ignore all 3 of these. So I ignore the have, the plan, and the spin. I ignored all 3 of those because that's Arnold's power. So it says, slide to this job under a neighborhood you control. When making a sale there, you need 1 alcohol or 1 gun less. At the end of your action turn, you may slide this job under another neighborhood you control. If you lose control of this neighborhood, unfulfill this job. I am going to do that. Slide this right under here, just like that. Oh, that makes me so happy. That's just a great move. So that basically means that I only need 1 barrel of alcohol to sell in this neighborhood to make money. 1 barrel. Guess where my nightclub is going. That's the end of my turn. I'm going to discard my cards. I still have 1 card in my hand, the Sicilian Hitman, so I'll draw 2, get the Moonshiner, and I'll draw 3, which will be bodyguards. Back to the Enforcer's turn, who will simply flip over the card. We will get 0 movement, so they will stay there, and they will get 2 of their action cubes. So 1 muscle. If the Enforcer has 2 or more thugs in prison, they don't. We can ignore that one. The Enforcer is, if the muscle, I'm going to mess this up at least 1,000 times, if the power is greater than the number of deals the Enforcer has, the Enforcer sends 1 thug to the underworld to get 1 dealer. We have 4 dealers. That's not the case. Did I just cheat? I totally cheated. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is where everybody is like yelling at me and reminding me that we didn't have those dealers. I forgot to reset him at the beginning of the game, didn't I? Oops. So that would be way, way, way too much to retcon. Although I can fix a little bit of it. So trying to fix this to the best of my abilities, and again, I apologize. I really am sorry here. This is what happens when you start rushing just a little bit too much. If I am correct, we would have had that one deal, which would give us 3 alcohol barrels and 2 guns, which means supplies would have gone out there. That means that this location would have been unsupplied when this card came across, and that means we would have did another deal, which means we would have sent one of our thugs to the other deal right there. That would have gave us 3 more alcohol and 2 more guns, just like that. And that would have been taken from this card right here. And we did not control that neighborhood yet because that came from this card. So that means these resources would be on this neighborhood right there. Oh boy, that's going to look really, really fun to go ahead and edit. And again, I apologize, and I think I fixed that out right. And if not, well, again, the whole idea of this video is just to give you an idea of how the game plays, not to see me actually film a video playthrough with 0 mistakes, because that's never going to happen. Never. I can teach games great. Play through these games without making mistakes? Yeah, I don't think I've ever filmed a video playthrough yet without at least 1 mistake. Ever. There's some logic behind that. Anyways, back onto this card. We have 0 movement, we have 1 muscle. Let's reevaluate everything now that I fixed everything, hopefully. The enforcer has 2 or more thugs in prison. We don't. If the power is greater than the number of deals the enforcer has, the enforcer sends 1 thug to the underworld to get a dealer. Our power is 1. We have 2 deals, not 4. 2. Yes, 2 deals. Okay. The enforcer will upgrade their gang. So we have 2 power right now. So let's go ahead and see if we can upgrade our gang. And I think we can actually do that right now. So we are in district number 6. We need to have $4 and 2 power. We definitely have that. So let's go ahead and spend $4, which we have. We will spend the $4 just like that, and then we will upgrade our gang by gaining power. Now we have +1 power going on for the rest of the game. We will upgrade this right that. We still have to take 1 level on the crime rate, which will put us at crime rate level 3. That will be the upgrade for our gang. Now we have +1 power for the rest of our actions. So now we have a total of 3 power right here. The enforcer carries out as many recruitments as power. So we can do that. Remember, now we have 1, 2, plus 1 more for 3. So we'll go 1, 2, 3 for our recruitments. Now back to our turn, and hopefully that is going to be the only mistake I make this entire video. We can always hope. Okay, for my turn, couple different options of things I can do at this point. I know that I want to start making upgrades and deals and all these wonderful things. So I need to figure out a way to upgrade and gain a nightclub. A nightclub requires 1 power and, 1 muscle and 1 influence. So actually, if I just play the Sicilian Hitman right now, just like that, I can just about do everything I want to do just by playing 1 card. Question is, do I just only want to play that 1 card, or do I want the Moonshiner and gain money for each of my thugs in the underworld? I am thinking I don't want to play the Moonshiner just quite yet. I don't. So let's go ahead and upgrade our gang. So this is going to be the card we're going to place into our plan. Actually, I think let's play smarter. Let us play much, much smarter. I think what we are going to do is, I think what is going to be better is to play smarter. So I need to take advantage of the Sicilian Hitman. I got to do much, much, much better here. Because I got the orphanage donation and I got the midnight shifts. But the orphanage donation, if I go to the authorities, I can do an upgrade for $3 and get -1 on my influence. Is it worth it? Nope, I think we'll go back to the original decision. We are going to play out the Sicilian Hitman into our plan. That's going to be the only card we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and upgrade our gang. To do the upgrade I want to do, it's going to be the nightclubs. It costs $4 plus 1 muscle plus 1 influence, which I produce pretty darn easily. So normally I would take $1 for having the ring. Since I forgot to do that, I will take it and then I'll put it back plus $3 extra for a total of $4 to go ahead and upgrade our gang. And that will cause our crime rate to go up to level 3. And then we get to gain a nightclub. We will flip this over just like this. And now this nightclub is ours and very, very well protected. And let's go ahead and add a nightclub token there, meaning that defense of this is now, well, it's currently 10. We have 6 plus 2, which is 8, and 2 more happens to be 10. We don't have to worry about losing that neighborhood to the enforcer just yet. And remember, it's cheaper to sell this neighborhood because we have the dock rendezvous going on right now. So now that we did that, we don't want to use that power. We can't use that power at all. That is going to be it for our turn. Now we get to go back over to the enforcer player who has no cards left over. So now they get to do a reorganization phase after I remember to draw my card and I drew bodyguards. I now have Moonshiner and 2 bodyguards in my hand. So let's go ahead and do a reorganization phase for the enforcer player. And now you get to see them steal some of my resources. Dirty cheater. So the first thing that happens is we get to sell in a neighborhood. So we're going to sell first from our surplus. Remember, we're not going to go from our deals. We need 3 alcohol to make this sale. That is going to give us $14. 1, 2, 3, 4. Plus 10 is going to be $14 for the enforcer right there. After we make our sale, then we're going to gain money for all of our controlled businesses. We have 1 controlled business. We have 2 controlled businesses. That's going to give us $6 total right there for having 2 controlled businesses. Next thing we are going to do is the enforcer is going to steal money from us. The number of cards or number of money he's going to steal from us is going to be based on this number of cards times the total amount of jobs we have. So we have 3 jobs times 1 card means he's actually going to steal $3 from us. So I'm going to take this 5, break it down into 5 ones. We'll keep 2, and he, the enforcer, will get 3 of the dollars from us because he's a horrible, dirty, evil cheater. So now that we've done that, we get to do the recruitment action for him, and we see that his recruitment level is currently at 2. So we'll go 1, and we'll go to 2. That is going to go back to us because that ends the enforcer's reorganization, except for just shuffling up his cards. And back to our turn. Honestly, though, I think you've seen enough gameplay to see exactly how the solo rules work. It's just basically repeating the same thing. Follow the instructions on the card, making sure to mind the minor differences, the way the enforcer plays the game versus the way the players play the game. Again, the game goes on pretty well. There's a couple different ways you increase the difficulty of the game if you really want to, and I find that the enforcer is actually a pretty decent opponent. Now, I haven't played the solo rules many, many times. I've only played them a couple times, so I can't really judge if the enforcers are a great opponent or a not so great opponent. But from my experience, they seem to give a decent challenge. I think if you are good at the game, you'll probably want to use one of those increased difficulty levels for the solo enforcer AI. And if you're just basically learning how to play the game, using the enforcer to learn how to play better, play with the basic rules, but there's some extra rules on the back of the solo rulebook that tell you exactly how to increase the difficulty of the enforcer. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video series. If you have any comments, questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll do my best to get them as quickly as I can. If you have any questions, you can always also free to email me, off-the-shelf board game reviews. That is ots@bgr@gmail.com. I do my best to answer those questions as quickly as I can. If you enjoy the content, you enjoy the videos I put out there, think about supporting the channel on Patreon. Just $1 in the tip jar is a great way to say thanks. The channel is 100% sponsor free, and a great way to say thanks is tossing a tip in a tip jar, or even just click the like and click the subscribe button. Just 2 mouse clicks, a great way to help grow with the channel. Keep those YouTube analytics on my side and help keep the channel growing strong. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed this video series. And as always, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.